national income tax or national insurance, working people, then they put it on employers. But they may have got away with that, I don't know. But how likely do you think it is we will see a rise in VAT?
Well, it sounds as though from this morning's reporting that it isn't going to happen at the very least, but you're absolutely right. I mean, yesterday, Sir Keir Starmer failed to denounce it, so it sounds as though it was something that they were considering. If it is, of course, we'll hear after 12 o'clock from Rachel Reeves and hear what she has to say exactly on that. But you're absolutely right, Julia. What's interesting about this is they tried to sort of play with the definition of working people and say, when we're increasing employers' national insurance contributions, that is not increasing taxes on working people, which is, of course, a complete lie because it's the difference between the impact of tax and the incidence of tax. We absolutely know that increasing taxes on employers does have an impact on jobs, and it means that there are significantly less jobs available. We've seen a decline in the number of vacancies. In addition to that, we also saw the increase in the minimum wage, which, of course, adds additional pressure to employers.
Which is great for those on the minimum wage, but it does have a knock-on impact, not just in private sector employers, whether it's worth hiring that extra employee or being able to put up wages. And again, you get the differentials for the next people up saying, well, what about my pay rise? But also for the public sector, because we're paying the minimum wage increase for everyone in the public sector too.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is the problem. I mean, of course, it sounds very nice to increase the minimum wage level. It increases the amount of support that those young people or generally people on low wages get. But in reality, it does have unintended consequences. And it means that, generally speaking, there will be less work available. Now, that's one of the damaging things about that. I mean, you know, I was on a minimum wage job when I was 16. Perhaps the company that I was employed by wouldn't have been able to hire me if minimum wage was a lot higher. You know, there are many countries like Sweden, which do not have any minimum wage laws, and actually it can be negotiated freely.
I don't agree. I don't agree with that. I mean, George Osborne always argued against it, saying, "Oh, we'd lose a load of jobs." I think employers should be able to have to pay a bare minimum of what people can actually live on. I think someone should be able to, you know, pay some basic bills on a minimum wage job. A lot of people don't just do that at 16; they do it their whole life, and people should be able to live on the minimum wage. A lot of people don't have power to negotiate their pay.
Well, the point would be, how do we give them more of that power? We give them more of that power by having a growing economy in which there are more vacancies for them to choose from.
This is true.
That is exactly how you ensure that employees have more power.
Yeah, but there are always some people who could be taken advantage of, and that's when we see where employers are going, well, let's go and hire these illegal migrants who can't work because we don't have to pay them a minimum wage. We can pay them half that or less than that, and they can't complain if we give them bad conditions or unsafe conditions because they've got nowhere to go for redress. So I'm not in favour of that, and I know a lot of, you know, I think we do need protections at the bottom end of the market. However, a lot of people entering that market will be young people. Now, the Chancellor is saying today she wants this youth jobs guarantee. We've heard, I mean, I don't know how many times we've heard these stories before, but we've got 1 in 8 young people who are NEETs, not in education, employment or training. It's gone up recently, but it's always been somewhere in that sort of realm for a very long time. It goes up, it goes down. But she says basically after 18 months, which is a shockingly long time, you basically, if you haven't got a job, we will find you something, either employment training or something else, but you won't be entitled to your benefits. First, do you believe even for a nanosecond she's actually going to follow through on that?
Well, this is the point, right? Do we actually think that the government have the guts to actually implement this scheme in the first place is the real question. There are a lot of unanswered questions, and I'm hoping we'll get some of those answers this afternoon. Who are these businesses that are going to be employing these young people? Is 18 months a little bit too young? I mean, effectively, we've seen a huge amount of people go from being economically inactive because they were students to then being economically inactive due to long-term sickness. So between 2021 and 2022, it was more than 63,000 people that went from being economically inactive because they were students to then being long-term sick. 18 months is an awfully long time to be out of work, and I think that it would get them used to not being in employment, especially if you're one of those.
And a big red flag to an employer, and as an employer said earlier, you know, I'd have to have a guarantee I could get rid of these people. Because why would I want to employ someone who's basically been lazy for the last 18 months? I mean, it should be something like 3 months max, shouldn't it? And then we're going to find you work. But the reality is,
indeed, in most US states, it's about 6 months. So you're absolutely right. It should be a lot less.
I think 6 months too long.
Well, indeed. I mean, part of the problem with this, Julia, is that there is no guarantee that any of this is going to work. I mean, how many times have we heard of these new employment schemes? Part of the problem is it is going to be taxpayers that are footing the bill for a lot of the wage subsidies. So the government have said that they are going to be subsidising a lot of these employment schemes. You and I, taxpayers, are going to be footing the bill for part of this. But there's also the problem where it's huge amounts of bureaucracy that are going to actually cost this. I mean, it's going to take thousands of new civil servants to actually implement the scheme in the first place. You know, benefits are effectively a cash transfer, which doesn't cost a huge amount in terms of the manpower to effectively have it happen, other than the actual money that's being spent. This scheme will be awfully expensive.
But I think getting people back to work can be very expensive. But I do think one of the cheaper ways is to just simply, I mean, you're not entitled to any benefits. I genuinely think an awful lot of parents who don't really care if their kid's feckless or not, when they're getting their housing benefit paid into the family coffers, or their child is able to move out and get a flat, you know, get bed sit or whatever it is. I think when their kid is their problem, they're not earning, they're not doing training, and they're basically, you're not entitled to a single thing. I think a lot of parents might wake up and maybe start, you know, basically being a little bit firmer with their kids. But I think it needs to start an awful lot earlier. But this is the thing, as you say, the government backtracked on their pathetically minimal attempt at dealing with the welfare bill. I mean, there's just no chance whatsoever that they will actually just say to people, no, you're not sick, you feel anxious on a Monday morning, you feel a bit depressed. Well, doesn't everybody on a Monday morning? You know, lovely blue skies today, you should be feeling. Off you go, go and find a job. They are not going to.
And
they're
part
going
of this,
do this.
you're absolutely, and part of it is a cultural problem, isn't it? I think a lot of young people tend to think that they have a right to not work. This is also an unanswered question. The government is saying, at least with the leaks that we've seen this morning and yesterday, that there will be some requirements for sort of if you have a genuine reason to not work, but we have no idea what that genuine reason is.
Well, tennis elbow. I mean, you know what I mean?
Previously.
But that's the thing. But also, it's not just a lot of young people think they've got a right to not work. They've also got a right to not take a job that they think's beneath them. We're going to have to get rid of that. I genuinely, I think one of the biggest problems we've got in society, I'm not joking, is not low self-esteem in young people. It's overweening high self-esteem. They need to be told, you have no opinions worth listening to, you don't know enough about the world, you're barely employable, and you need to prove yourself. Love you loads, but off you go. I genuinely think that would be a healthier thing to tell our young people. No offence if you're 18 and you think differently, but I'm still right.
You're right. Well, I think we wrap people in cotton wool far too much. And look, the benefits bill is huge. The fact that we have a situation in which 25% of 16 to 65-year-olds are currently out of work is insane. And part of it is the huge benefit bill.
Absolutely. Reem Ibrahim, thank you so much indeed, spokesman, Institute of Economic Affairs. See, I can't imagine Reem ever being unemployed. She'd be negotiating her salary. But you can tell, but not all young people are like that. And a lot of that is down to failed parenting, failed schooling. But at the end of the day, we can't go, oh, well, then we'll just leave you on benefits the rest of your life. Not going to happen.